Okay, now let's take what we've been learning all the way along here, all these different box model properties, and apply them now to some page content, specifically some imported graphics. I'm going to flip back over to my code, and I'm going to go and find that list that you and I created, along with the div, this whole piece of text here, all this code here. I'm going to select all that, get rid of it. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and get rid of the ID selector that you and I have been working on, this bulleted list ID selector. I'm going to grab the whole thing and toast it just like that. All right. Now, next, what we want to do is we want to go and insert a graphic, and then what we'll do is we'll apply some CSS to the graphic. Actually, what we'll do is we'll insert a few graphics here so you can see how this is going to play out. So in that empty spot where my bulleted list once resided, I'm going to go and insert a graphic in there. So I'm going to go open angle bracket, IMG, space, SRC. So this is all HTML, right? Equals, and what I've done is I've made sure that we have some graphics inside our project files folder so we can go and specify the graphic name. So I'm going to go cartoon1.jpg, just like this. And then make sure that's in quotes, by the way. And then close angle bracket just like that. And if you want to have a quick look, go ahead and save your work and refresh. There we go. There's our first cartoon graphic. Now, as a matter of fact, I actually want 2 graphics inserted into my page, at least 2. So I'm going to grab all this code that you and I just typed in, and I'm going to copy this code, and then maybe down a little bit later on inside my document, I'll go and paste in this code, except I'm going to change it from cartoon 1 to cartoon 2, just to give ourselves a little bit of variety. And once again, you can go and refresh and check that out, and we should now have an extra graphic. This second guy's a little smaller, but that's okay. All right, now, what can we do in terms of actually formatting our graphics? Well, there's a bunch of things that I want to sort of bounce off of you here, and this is where things start to come together. Everything we've been talking about all the way up until this point, everything hopefully will start to gel here for you. So I go, all right, I want to format my graphic. So what kind of a selector should I work with? Should I use an ID selector? Should I use a class? Should I use an HTML selector, a redefined HTML element? What should I do here? Well, maybe I'll wind up going with an HTML selector, a redefined HTML element. So I'm looking at the code that you and I just inserted. What HTML element is at play here? Well, what I have selected here on screen is an HTML element and also an HTML attribute. Don't forget the attribute always appears inside the element. So the attribute is SRC. The element itself is the IMG. Okay, so now I know what I need to go and specify inside my internal style sheet. It's going to be IMG, right? So go ahead and type that out if you like. Throw in your space, throw in your squiggly brackets just like that. And then we can go to town in terms of applying some formatting. Now, what kind of formatting? Well, let's see here. I'm going to throw a border onto my graphic. So I'm going to throw on border, :space. You could go border -top if you wanted to target a specific side, or you could target a specific color or style. You've seen all that already. I'm going to use some shorthand here, though. So I'm going to go border, :space, and maybe I'll go 4 pixels, and I'll say orange, and I'll say solid for the style, just like that, okay? What else? Well, maybe I want to control the spacing around the outside of my graphic. How do I do that? Is that padding or is that margin? Do you remember the difference between the two? Padding is on the inside, margin is on the outside, right? So I'm going to go with margin. Again, I'm going to use some shorthand here. I'm just going to go margin, :space, and I'm going to go 10 pixels, just like that, okay? So that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and save this now. And notice I'm not going to go and apply the new rule to the graphic. Again, because I'm using an HTML selector, I don't need to tell my image to be an image. He already is an image, so I don't need to go and apply the new CSS rule that I just created. Just save up your work, flip back over to your browser, and refresh. And now my graphic has this orange border on it. It has the spacing around the outside, which I specified as well, and so on. Okay, so that's wonderful. So it worked. Now, of course, you're more than welcome to throw in even more CSS properties if you want. You can really go nuts here and have some fun. But there's something important that I want to point out here. Not only did we format the first graphic on our page, this first cartoon, we also formatted the second cartoon simultaneously. Now, how did that happen? Well, we've seen this a number of times already. We've redefined heading 1s, we've redefined heading 2s and paragraphs, and perhaps a few other things in there as well. This is no different just because it's a graphic. It's no different. So what I've done here, if I flip back over to my code, is I didn't specify that I wanted cartoon 1 to be formatted. What I'm saying here is I want all graphics on my page to look like this, okay? Now, maybe you want that, but maybe you don't want that. In the real world, something like graphics, you probably don't want this because you might have menus and headers and, perhaps some graphics over in the sidebar, something like that, that you don't want to format, right? So typically you'd want to target specific images. So how the heck am I going to handle this if I don't want to format all my graphics? I only want to format one. Well, check this out. What I'm going to do is rather than calling the image HTML element, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use either an ID selector or a class rule. And again, you have to ask yourself, well, which is it that you want to use? Don't forget, an ID selector, it's a one-shot deal. We can only use it once. A class rule we can apply over and over again. So I'm thinking to myself in terms of the look that I'm going for, the layout that I'm going for, I want to be able to format some of my images, like more than one, but not all my images. So then an ID selector is out. It's almost like a process of elimination, right? Just asking yourselves questions. And the class selector type is in. So I'm going to change this now. I'm going to go dot, and I'll just call this image controller. Go ahead and save up your work. Now that I've specified a class rule, now I have to actually go and apply this class rule to the image inside my document. Just sit tight, and I'll show you a little bit more in terms of formatting your graphics in just a second.